super excited to announce this group. I think this is the first time I've gotten to say anything about the New York Times Magazine, so that makes me, or the New York Times. So I'm really excited to say that we have Tom Delavan here from T Magazine, the style magazine of the New York Times. Simon Mørch from Scenery Magazine, based in the Netherlands, right? London. Are you based in London? Ah, God, okay. He's precious, and the magazine is so fine. Actually, today somebody was saying, I need to see if there's any more of those scenery magazines. And I was like, we're out. Everybody grabbed them. And also one of my best friends, Dave Dawson from Urban Electric. And I'm really happy to have them here talking about new adventures and new adventures in media. And really what we're talking about is independent publishing, which is really cool. And I know you guys have The Current on your seats, and it's an incredible publication that I'm super proud of, and I have nothing to do with it, but it's but every time I get it, I'm like, I at least know the people who are doing it. So this is an incredible group here, and I'm going to turn it over because I need to stop talking, and I hope you guys have a great day and enjoy yourselves. Thanks.
Good morning, everybody. Thanks for coming so early.
Morning.
So I've been in print media, in magazines for 20 years coming up on. And that entire time, it's been kind of a business in contraction. Condé Nast and Hearst have been laying people off, shutting magazines, consolidating. People, that used to do one thing now to wear 3 hats. So in that backdrop, I was really amazed to see these brave men starting magazines when people that really know what they're doing are shutting them. So my first question to you,
because we don't know what we're doing.
So my first question.
That was our first clip.
When you first thought of this idea, tell me how it came up and what was your thought process?
Me?
Yeah, go ahead.
You start.
Well, I don't know. I mean, I worked in fashion for many years, and I always had this sort of fascination from the interiors world, and I was really in love with Vogue in the 2000s and the 19th, mid-90s, and I love this sort of way of bridging fashion photography and interiors like they did, and they had great people like Karl Lagerfeld and Deborah Turbenwell and Bruce Weber, Tim Walker, shooting interior stories, and they were sort of telling a different story, which I really liked. And I thought, I just want to make the impossible possible and do this thing. And I didn't really know what I was walking into, but that was sort of why I started it.
So you wanted to make something like that, and you were just waiting for someone. I'm going to do it until someone tells me I can't, kind of thing?
Well, I guess so. I mean, I was younger, and I sort of had the courage to do it. And I felt like there was a gap in the market. This didn't exist. And it sort of proved that way. And it didn't exist, that someone could do a publication where it was, the photographer is equally as important as the people you feature or the house, the story you tell, essentially.
Interesting. Yeah. One of my first jobs was at Italian Vogue.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
It was so good at that time.
So good.
If you don't know, Deborah Turbenwell would do a whole story of pictures out of focus, and it would just be about beautiful colors, but you wouldn't really see any detail. You just see a blurry bedroom in Mexico, and it would be just so beautiful. You want to pull it out and put it on your wall or keep it.
I mean, both of the magazines that these guys are making are so lush and beautiful. They're exciting, and I feel like it really injected a new energy into the magazine, the interiors magazines. Tell me a little bit about when you first came up with the idea.
Yeah, well, not some similarity and some difference from Simon. First of all, I would say I'm excited to be here to talk about this topic. Kind of grateful to be on the stage with the legendary Tom Delavan and talk about media legend and soon to be legend in the making, Simon Mørch. And I'll tell you why I'm fascinated by this topic. Print is no longer a must. It's no longer a have-to-have. You know, it's a want-to-have. But with that transition, opens up a whole lot of creative opportunity and creative freedom and joy. And, you know, we were talking about this earlier. Obviously, the economics of print have changed radically. We all know that in the last decade. But I don't think that people's love of print has diminished at all. You know, the economics are different, but the passion for print is no less, maybe it's even more. And so for us, you know, this is just a really interesting opportunity to try to play into that. With one thing I was to say about our similarity. So we started. So our origin story of the Current is a little bit different from Simon's. We didn't have a background. We're not publishers, so we come at this. Obviously, the book is not our actually technical product. We sell lighting fixtures, and we. This is probably 7 or 8 years ago. Our team was sort of frustrated with the conventional ways to tell our story, which were single-page print advertising or editorial pitches, and we were trying to, you know, find some way to round that out more, to tell more of a full story. And you know, Adam Hargis, wherever he is, told me I need to put a pitch in for print advertising, but this is maybe a little slight. Sorry, Adam. Our motivation was to try to get out of that a little bit and to be able to tell our story in a more full way. We were, maybe like Simon, naive about this. At the time, we thought we felt a little daring, frankly. We thought it's not so much anymore. I feel like the universe of this has really expanded. But at the time, we felt like we were doing something really daring. I have an incredible team who, you know, we didn't know anything we were doing. Simon and I were talking about this at dinner the other night. He has such a background in this, in photography, and we did not have that. We make lighting fixtures. But you know, people say necessity is the mother of invention. I think naivete is the mother of invention, frankly.
Yeah,
it's like, we just didn't know what we were doing, so we just dove into it. And my team is incredible. They're always willing to take this on. And we said, let's just give this a shot. And the first round, if anybody remembers the first issue of this, it was really mostly stories about Urban Electric in creative, in really interesting ways, but mostly that. And over time, and we can talk about it more, but over time that's evolved to really just be more us telling other people's stories, the people that we find fascinating. So,
I mean, I do love, you know, Dave runs a very successful lighting company, and you always celebrate your employees, which is kind of amazing that you can actually do that at the same time as kind of creating something that's really interesting for people who know nothing about your company.
Well, we do, in the beginning of each issue, we do a highlight feature on some of our craftsmen or some of our engineers or designers or people in purchasing, or we have, I think, an incredible team across the board, and it gives us an opportunity to tell that story. But then the majority of the book is taken up highlighting, celebrating people that we just find fascinating, you know, and people who are doing really, really interesting things. Like I always say we don't consider ourselves the cool kids. What we do is,
you find the cool kids.
We find the cool kids, and then we we sort of befriend the cool kids, and we saddle up next to them, and we look a little bit cool by reflection. That's the hope.
Yeah. No, it is interesting about print media because you and I are of the age where that was your way into the visual world, to things you couldn't see otherwise. Before there was an internet, you were waiting for that once a month hit of, house porn.
Yeah, right.
And it was really like imagine if, for the young people, imagine if your phones were taken away and your computer was taken away, but yet once a month you'd get House and Garden or World of Interiors, and that's what made it so exciting. So part of it, I think, is a nostalgia, but what I think is so interesting is that Simon, who's younger, was really drawn to like an Italian Casa Vogue, and what was your experience when you first saw those things? Was it like I was trying to think how you experienced magazines differently from them how we did?
Well, first of all, I don't think I'm that much younger than you.
Taking better care of
He
yourself.
looks that much younger.
Well, I'm Scandinavian, and I was born in the mid-'80s. It's interesting what you're saying, because what we're doing is obviously we have a reach on digital platforms such as Instagram and so on, and we do use those platforms to like tell our stories. But the approach to the publication is really everything is shot on film, everything is hand printed, everything takes a very long time, costs a fortune. It's just like a really difficult process. And also like the people we want to feature, we spent many months trying to convince them. You know, I would go to Paris. For the next issue, the book always opens with an archive feature. And we have Jean-Paul Gault as he's the archive for this time. And I had to go to Paris like 4 times and knock on his door for him to even like consider me.
Just because you're an unknown entity?
Well, because some people, they want to feel safe, and they want to make sure that you sort of respect their houses. This is very different than doing a fashion editorial.
Yes.
It's
very intimate.
Yeah, I mean, someone was in my house in London the other day doing a little video with me, and I was so intimidated by it. And I thought, oh gosh, I do this all the time with all these different people.
Yeah, it's very exposing. Like, you feel very exposed.
Yeah. So, did I answer your question? I'm not sure.
Yeah, I mean, I guess my question is, you could just do this as an online magazine, but it was very important for you to do it in print.
I think that's sort of why the response is so good and why people love it, is because it's something that actually does take a long time to put together, and it is something where you have to like go to great lengths to do, and it's something that you just cannot do with your iPhone.
Right.
So in that sense, I think that's what makes it special, and that's what makes people want to buy it or look forward for it to come in the mail. And I think maybe that's also going to be the survival of it, that you're sort of taking a step back in a way.
Yeah.
But of course, you're still online.
That was the same. Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
I was going to say that was the same for us. You know, I mean, our strategy with it was, if you're going to do print, nobody has to do print these days, right? Because you can reach everybody digitally. If you're going to do print, you should really do it for what print is special for, and uniquely special. You know, I'm old enough to remember the days when we would go around to clients' offices swapping out catalog pages. You know, but you don't need to do that in print anymore, right? That's the web. The web does that very easily. So for us, we thought, if we're going to do print, we really want to do things that celebrate the beauty and the texture and the tactile nature of print. This is why the book has all these paper changes and foils and all the different types. You know, to us that makes it romantic, and then we can obviously still take advantage of the digital aspects for, you know, video and extra photography and that sort of thing. So, I mean, but it wouldn't make a lot of sense. And I think what Simon said is true, to just sort of repeat what's available digitally, you know, by killing some trees. It doesn't really make much sense.
Right.
You know?
And I feel both of you guys, it's such a beautiful object. I mean, I think there's a kind of a parallel between retail and print advertising. It's like, if you want to have a store now, that you really have to offer people an experience that's different. So it's like the magazine has to be, as you said, a rich experience that is different from what you can get online. Tell me about a little bit, you know, obviously when you started these magazines, you clearly are different from what's out there. How would you describe both of you guys, how would you describe your kind of little niche in this space?
Well, that's a good question. Like I said, our motivation was initially to tell stories the way, to sort of position ourselves and let our story be told in a more full, robust way.
So you weren't really looking at other magazines being like, where's the white space?
Not so much, and we weren't really trying to emulate another we weren't really trying to be publishers. I mean, this was, especially in the early conceit, it was really a really glorified piece of marketing, you know, collateral, right? What I do think, because of the way our setup is, and because we're not primarily in publishing, and we're not we're not responsible to advertisers. You know, we follow the stories that we feel really passionate about, that we feel like our clients will respond to and share with us. And then I think one of the big things that we're able to do that maybe not everybody has this luxury is we go very, very deep. So like the book that you guys have in your hands, this is the first time we've done this. We shrank the number of stories, but we increased the pages per story. So each of the stories in this book are 50, 60, 70 pages long. That's not your typical print publication. And we get the opportunity to do that because it's just what we would like to do. And in this particular one, this is about details. And we felt like, you know, I know for me, if I pick up a magazine and there's 8 or 10 pages or 12 pages, which is a really big spread these days, if it's a space that I am enjoying, I always get to the end of it, I'm like, but I need to see more. Where's the other aspects of this? What's the other rooms? What's the outside look like, you know? And so we wanted this, especially this year, to really blow that out. And so that's why you know, I think that's a big differentiator for us to the extent that we have one.
How do you see yourself in the landscape of other print magazines? Where do you fit in, or did you think of it that way? Like, how are we going to be different, or you knew you were different?
I knew I was different. No, I think that sort of that happened with the first issue. I sort of had an idea of what I would like to do. Obviously, I'm like a huge magazine fan. I adore fashion. I adore pictures. I adore photography. So I had like a quite good idea of what I like, and how you could sort of concept an interiors title in a way that I haven't seen before. But it's also learning by doing in a way. And it's sort of, we're now on our 3rd issue, so it's all fairly new. But I feel like we sort of found our feet in a way, and now there's sort of a way of doing it, and a specific look. But that has sort of come along on the way.
Yeah. I didn't know that you shoot everything in film, but it makes so much sense to me because you can feel it somehow when you look at that magazine. And I think both of what you guys do feels so fresh. I'm very happy about it, even though I should be kind of annoyed. we can't do if we do a story that's longer than 8 pages, that's very rare.
Right.
And I actually did a story. So in this issue of The Current that's coming up, there's a story about this. I call her Princess Alice. Yeah. Princess Alice of Liechtenstein.
It's an amazing story.
It's a beautiful. She lives in a castle. She married the Prince of Liechtenstein. Lives in a castle in Austria. She was a curator, living in London. So nice. Yeah. Anyway, I did a story on her, and it was one of my favorite stories. Someone asked me the other day, what was one of your favorite stories? And it was that one. And I think ours was maybe 8, maybe 10. Right. And you went so deep, and I was actually looking at the pictures being like, where was that? I didn't see that. I was there for 2 days.
Yeah. And if you look at that story, I mean, that is a great example of where 50 or 60 pages to give something like that room to breathe, it really is special, you know. And that, you know, like I said, we're not trying to compete with publications, so we're not trying to differentiate ourselves per se, but it's a real joy to be able to have that kind of freedom. That story, if you look at that house is unbelievable, and the detail is just off the charts in wood carving and glass.
Yes, actually, it's one of my favorites that I've ever done.
Yeah.
And you say joy, and when I look at your magazines, I think these guys had a fun time making this. Like, I can feel that.
And a stressful time.
What do you think was the most stress? Like, what's the hardest thing about this that you didn't anticipate?
Well, there's various factors. Like, I think the subjects can be difficult sometimes. People are very sort of opinionated, and you think you have a great idea, you know. So it's you have to collaborate. I think for me it's more. I think I'm very ambitious with it, and I get frustrated when I don't get what I want.
Your vision can't be.
Yeah, exactly. And well, especially for the first issue, it was really difficult because I had to go out there with like a piece of paper and an idea, you know, and I went to Amanda Harlick's house and I was like, this is going to be great, by the way. But see, you know, it's hard to sell something that doesn't exist. So I think
it's so much easier now that you can be like, here's what we do.
Absolutely. I mean, I'm so happy we're here now and not 3 years back in time, because that was not as easy as I thought it would be.
I mean, Amanda Harlick, so what's really interesting about what you guys do, so what I do is I try and find things that have never, that's question number one, has it ever been published? And if the answer is yes, then I move on. And what you guys have done is you've taken things which have been published at some point, and you give it a whole new spin on it. You go deep, you give it this art direction, cool photography, details. I mean, I think that's what's amazing to me. Yeah. And it actually made me think, I guess we can revisit some of the things that have already been published.
Why not? That was part of our thing. You know, when you're pitching product or you're pitching your story, there was a lot of that. It only has to be what's new. You know, and we got really frustrated with that sort of cadence. But you know, to your question about challenges for us, I think one of the big ones is bandwidth for our team. So we produce this with all the same. When we started the mag, we have not added anybody to our team in 8 years to do this. This is the same team who was previously doing their real full-time jobs, and now we've added this. Luckily, Lindsay Rocks, our art director, seems to have this. This is all her genius, pretty much. But she seems to have an infinite ability to take on more work and more stress. So she hasn't asked for a raise or anything. It's been amazing. Yeah. No, she really does. But
now's your chance.
Staff bandwidth is a thing. Cost is a thing. You know, I mean, this is an expensive publication to put out, and it's always weighs a little heavy on the budget. And then I would say the other challenge for us that we have is getting on people's schedules. These are prominent people for a reason, you know, because they're busy and they've got other lives going on, and even publishing on an annual basis gets very hard. I don't know how you guys do it, because it's very hard for us to make that work, even with a 12-month production cycle. And then the other thing I would say, one of the other challenges we have is putting pencils down. You know, I mean, honestly, we will minute this thing to death until Lindsay goes to press checks for 3 weeks, and we're still making changes on press.
Yeah.
So we should probably fix that.
I mean, obviously your business model is very different because you have a company that is making money that's funding this.
Right.
How do you do this? How do you make this work money-wise?
That's a good question.
Are you really rich?
Well, first of all, for the sort of idea when we started out was to do it a little bit like Egoist did back in the day, and they did these fantastic adverts themselves. So they would convince Cartier or Louis Vuitton or however to do their own ads in the magazine, and I'm pretty sure they did that leopard on the street looking in the window. I'm not sure. But they were great, and they were like black and white and so beautiful, and they fitted the magazine. So that was the sort of starting point. And for the first 2 issues, we convinced Fendi to give us some money, and we convinced them to do the adverts ourselves because we thought we could do much better than them. And so we did, and that was really great. People really responded to it. But to answer your question, now we're on more of a like traditional advertising schedule, which also means that you have to come out at a certain time, because if a brand gives you money, you cannot.
They expect it to be.
It's hard to push it back 3 months and say sorry. You sort of have to like be.
They have a media rollout.
Exactly, it's a whole other way of working. So in that sense, it's quite useful to work with advertisers, because you actually there's a cutoff point where you just have to go to print.
Yeah. I mean, so what he's saying is, what's so interesting is when we lay out our magazine, it's like posted up in a room. All so you can see how is it flowing, and it looks amazing. Then you put the ads in, And it's like, and you know, some of these ads are beautiful, like any LVMH brand is going to be beautiful, but some of them are less beautiful, and it's very interrupting. You know, you're reading this beautiful story about Princess Alice's castle, and then there's an ad for a dishwasher. It's not great. So his brilliant idea is we're going to design the ads so they feel part of the piece, and it is like a better experience. I shouldn't say that. Yeah. It's a different but also really good experience. Sorry, Adam.
Adam, do you want to speak? Well, if I may make a plug for the New York Times, the other bit to this, of course, is that, and I think Simon and I both have a very, very small audience, right? Very small distribution. This year was our biggest print quantity ever, and I think we printed 17 or 18,000. That's the biggest. The New York Times is in a completely different scale. You know, so
yes, our reach
right.
is better.
Yeah, right. You're welcome, Adam. Adam, you're welcome.
So, you know, I went to the scenery party when this issue was that your second issue?
Yeah, it was.
I went to this party, and it was an amazing party. It was at Peter Schlesinger, who, if you don't know who he is, he's an incredible artist who makes these large-scale ceramics, and he was kind of like, if you know David Hockney's work, he was always the guy in the pool with the tan lines. And it was an incredible party because you brought together, I know you're not that as young as you look, but you brought together a group of young people with the kind of Peter Schlesingers of the world, and it was really magical. Like, are you going to keep doing events? Like, are there other ways you're going to expand the brand?
Yeah, I think when I started the publication, the idea was really to create a lifestyle brand. So for the first issue, I did lampshades and tea caddies, and I did a collaboration with a British potter called Steve Harrison. We did a little run of these beautiful lusterware mugs, and it was great. First of all of it sold, so people liked the stuff, but it was also a very good way of communicating. And I think so is the parties, I've realized. And I always, if I have friends that has a brand, for example, I always look at them and think, why would they want to do a party and spend all this money or do a fashion show or something? It's just so much work to get everyone to come and eat and drink and then leave again. But the reality is that it's such a great way to expand your network and meet people. It just really works. So for this instance, I convinced Peter Schlesinger to do a party in his loft in Manhattan, where he moved into in the 80s. After his partner, Eric, passed away, I don't think he's had a party for many, many years. So it took a bit of convincing, but it was just so cool. And he, as you say, he's probably in his mid-70s, and all of his friends from that era came.
Yeah,
and it was
nice.
good. It was so successful. So yeah, we're going to do much more of that.
People were just happy to be there. It was a great feeling.
Yeah, it was good.
What about you? I guess you already have your product.
Yeah, well, I will say, this has, for sure, the book has exceeded all of our expectations in terms of what we hoped to achieve with it, and now it has. So for us, it's in and of itself, it's this incredibly creative endeavor that is a lot of juice for our team, frankly. But yeah, the further we're going with it, the more we're starting to think about more things. Obviously, the book drives all of our digital marketing or branding throughout the year. So we take the book, print it once a year, and then we chop it up into small pieces and serve that out. So that's a good bit of extension. But we're starting this. We've done over the last couple of years some trips with really beloved clients where we take them to some of these stories. So we did a story on Cumberland Island off the coast of Georgia, which was for many years the Carnegie family's summer home. and it's a really fascinating place. We took about 16 or 18 clients there for a couple nights, and we're taking a group to Copenhagen it's a whole nother, the story we did a couple of years ago on Valdemar Slot, and we're going to stay there at this incredible home. So we're doing more of that, and then I probably shouldn't say too much about it, but in September we're going to be doing a really, really clever, I think really creative installation in New York to celebrate the 4 stories in this book, and producing a documentary to go along with that. So we're trying to find ways to expand that. And I think that, like the documentary thing, for instance, it feels like there's a fun opportunity to tell some of these design-oriented stories on film, like I shouldn't say film, but in true documentary style.
Mm-hmm.
So we're doing that too. So.
People always ask me the question, how do you find your stories? And I never have a really good answer for it, so I'm going to ask you guys.
Well, it's kind of like a weird instinct, isn't it? It's
yes.
You research and research and research, and you find something that feels right, and then I go and visit them, and that's sort of how it's done. But I have a quite clear idea, quite far out on what I want to do and what feels right for the publication. And the harder it is, the better, I suppose.
Yeah, that's right. What about you? How do you find your stories?
That's an interesting question, because we're not really constrained by sort of traditional or conventional types of editorial decisions. So in some ways it's can be more challenging to figure out what makes sense for us to do. I mean, obviously we're not breaking news in the book. We're not that topical or trendy. Primarily, we're really trying to we pursue things that we find really speak to us, that are really passionate, that we're passionate about passionate people, doing fascinating things. I'll give you a great example. What I always say was the classic perfect story for us was this Valdemar Slot story. It's an incredible story. I think it might be, you would know better than I would, but I believe it's the largest non-royal home in Denmark. We did this story last issue or 2 issues ago. So it's an incredibly gorgeous, gorgeous place. It was in this family for 14 generations. There was a lot of family drama in the most recent generation. Just the visuals were incredible, so that was really great. We had unique access because our chief marketing officer happened to go to college with Louise, who owned it, and it was a really deep, rich story, and it really hadn't been told very much that we knew of in the United States. And so for us, that checked all the boxes, of an interesting story. But we don't, much like you said, we're also running stories that have been covered other places. We try to use our format to take a different approach to it.
Right.
Like the Austria story.
Do you have a favorite story that you published? Or do you love them? Is that saying picking a child?
Yeah, well, that's a hard one. No, not really. I think I have many stories that I really love. I think for this issue, we've done a couple of remakes. So we have a big feature on Peter Hinwood, who was Rocky in the Rocky Horror Show. And he was also the partner of Christopher Gibbs, who's a very famous decorator in the UK. And he's been in the world of interiors quite a few times, I would say, over the years, but probably not the last 10 years. And I thought it was just a great sort of challenge to go in and do it again, but also, I suppose, to record a space that's not always going to be there. And I love those stories. It's like the Jean-Paul Goude. He's also not that young anymore, and he lives in this incredible sort of deco-y house from the late 20s in Paris. In the 19th, is overlooking the whole of the city with his wife Karen, and that's so special to me. That's in the new issue as well. So yeah, I like going back and doing something that has been done before.
Yeah, it's actually great, because I feel like you're also speaking to a younger audience.
That's
and
true,
you kind of know what what people in their 20s and 30s do and don't know about.
Yeah.
Because sometimes I think, we've all seen that, but it's like, no, only people over 40 have seen that.
Well, Simon, he told me a story last night that I would love if you would share it, or I'll share it for you. But we're talking about like things that cannot never be recreated, you know. So recently he did a story, I think we all know, or probably lots of us know. This is an interesting example of how different approaches can be taken to literally the same subject. Simon, will you tell the story about Robert Kimes' apartment?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, so for the first issue of Scenery, we did, Anne Hardy, who's here today, I met at Robert Kimes, and we wanted to do a feature on him, and it took a while to sort of get access to his apartment, which is in Chelsea, I believe. And we finally got in, and the year before, Robert has sadly passed, and the apartment has been left as it was. And Druids was doing a big auction on all of his furniture and a collection, which was remarkable. And we came in July, which was the day before the auction house took everything out. So we were the last people in his apartment, sort of recording what was never to be seen again. And it was a really special moment. We sort of came in, and he's been like really well recorded. Like
Yes, everything's been published.
Yeah.
Right. I know, we've published a bunch of it.
Right.
Yeah, you've seen him many, many times, many, many places. But we still, it was such a great challenge, and we made it very special. So we came into the flat, and we pulled all the curtains, and we turned the lights on, and we lit the candles, and we sort of pretended he was there. And we did a very sort of personal feature on the house. And we did a great cover of his fridge. It was just super cool. And I think I'm just so happy that we did that, because that is actually, no one will actually ever be able to go back and do that now.
Which I think is incredible. And Robert Kimes is obviously, like you said, he's a legend, was a legend, and he's been covered in every single way you can imagine. Simon covers him that way in a really incredibly special way. We did a story on him in this issue, and we focused on Orlando Addy, who's the young man who has taken over for Robert. And we had, thanks to Anne Hardy, this incredibly personal, intimate access to Orlando and to the story of that transition. And so that was its own, unique angle on Robert and his career. So that's, to me, is a perfect distillation or perfect example of somebody who's been covered for 40, 50 years, and Simon covers him in a really unique way, and I think we covered it in a unique way just because of our the approach that we can take, sort of the creative freedom that we each have.
Yeah. I could talk to you guys all day, but I feel like the time's flying. Maybe we should open it up to some questions.
That'd be great. I've got a mic.
Does anyone have, here we go, over here.
I can try without.
Yeah. Okay, you can project.
Dave, you touched on this a little bit, the expense that goes into something like this. And as someone who manages a marketing budget, I look at this and all I see is like how much it must cost. And it's important, right? Because you want it to reflect the quality of electric. So I'm just curious if you could talk a little bit about any sacrifices you have to make in the budgeting process and kind of how you look at like the return on investment.
That's a great question. First of all, you hit on something that I think is important, which is we do take very, very seriously the fact, or we believe that the book connotes something about us and our product. So literally the quality of the print, how much care and thought goes into it, what we hope, conveys an intentionality that applies to every aspect of our operation or our product or whatever. So I think that's a very important thing. So while it is very expensive, it's kind of a non-negotiable as far as I'm concerned, again. But the other thing is we have to make choices. We're a small company. We obviously, Adam won't like to hear this, but a lot of that budget came from our print advertising budget. We were spending pretty much that much, again, on print, on advertising. We don't have showrooms. That's a major, that's for better or worse, but that is a decision, the priority that we've made to put that into this. So, you know, for sure, we have to, you know, we have to make choices, yeah. But we feel very, and I think the more this goes on, the more committed we are to the book being a central part of our effort.
I kind of have a question. So maybe for you, Tom. For everybody. I don't care who answers it. But it seems like just after watching Salone and Milan Design Week and all the fashion that's coming into the home space, and then other magazines I'm hearing about, like Cultured, I think is going to be doing a home publication. And so all these shelter, like everybody seems to be really fixated on shelter. I mean, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think one of the reasons it's so exciting to people is you're going into private spaces. So fashion, you know, you can see the latest collection hours after it's been shown. So I feel like that's kind of like a little more exposed, whereas you can't get into Robert Kimes' flat in Chelsea. So I think there's like a certain voyeurism that we really benefit from.
I also think that's why Simon's approach is brilliant, and we talked about it. I told him this the other night at dinner. I really think he's created a unique lane. You know, I don't know of anybody else who is shooting shelter through this fashion lens. I mean, it's a really incredibly unique thing, but he's bringing these things together that want to be together, for sure.
I thought you were going to ask a different question about, which I want to answer.
Go for it.
So, if you go to Salone or Design Miami, the fashion brands are just elbowing their way in there with a lot of money, and I find it super annoying because
you're not the first person to say that. Somebody else.
And
I
tell you, I mean, for a couple of reasons. One, you know, it's like. So you go to Salone to see the new furniture introductions. These are companies that have been doing it for 100 years, that have won the Compasso d'Oro. That, you know, it's like the fashion company will come in and say like, oh, we're going to make a chair. They're usually not good chairs because that's not what they do. Mm-hmm. It's like if Molteni decided to do a fashion line, it probably wouldn't be very good either. Mm-hmm. So I kind of wish it was. Maybe I'm just being reactionary, but I kind of wish Design Week could be Design Week without, you know. And also as an editor, it's not great because your big advertiser saying, your big fashion advertiser is saying, oh, you need to come see our, you know, chair, you know, and I'm like, no, I'm here to see the design clients. So they're kind of fighting for your time, and then you have to go because they're advertisers, and what you're seeing is not that interesting because it's not what they do. They're not really innovating. So, yeah.
It's interesting because from, I think, our perspective, seeing, if you didn't go to Milan, which I didn't because I was in the middle of this, and next year I'm going, but it did seem like a big buzz around all that. You know, so I think it was
they have the money, so they can create some, and sometimes, you know, I shouldn't say across the board. So Hermes always does a beautiful installation, and they have great home product. Loewe, you know, the previous designer had a sincere interest in design. So I feel like it can be done well, but what I object to is when it's not done well and then just through force of marketing dollars, they're able to kind of like overshadow some more interesting things.
I mean, actually, we saw this last year. I'll just be real quick, but Banana Republic came into the home space last year. And they were in and out in a flash. I mean, they're obviously not Loewe or Hermes, but they were like, it was in and out. It was super quick. They were like, yeah, no, we don't need to be doing this. So maybe that's what will happen here. Any other questions besides me talking? I need to shut up. Oh, good. You want to stand up or just be loud?
I'm going to go back to ROI. So what I hear is, no, because what I hear you guys all saying is the blending of something different and new. And I want to know, are you seeing that return on investment? Your distribution is through the design firms or through what? And then where is it? Does it have a longer shelf life? And how are you seeing it back?
Well, that's a great, the ROI question is a great one, and to a certain extent, I feel like it's probably a little bit like publicity, PR, or any other sort of branding thing. You have to let go a little bit and trust, because you can't, a lot of this you cannot measure. But you asked the question about distribution. I mean, we have to sort of trust that the book, puts us in a conversation that we might not otherwise be in. Excuse me. If you, anybody who follows Simon Sinek knows, he says, don't tell people what you do, tell them why you do it. And for us, this book is kind of our way of saying why, because we love discovery and we love a challenge, and we just frankly feel super lucky to be in this industry. And so it gives us, rather than simply saying, here's the lights we make, hopefully you'll buy one of our lights, it gives us the opportunity to express why we love doing this and what we just feel so lucky to be in an industry that has so much beauty and so many fascinating characters, I mean, I came out of law, and I can tell you, how many, there's not a lot of beauty in law and not a lot of fascinating characters in law, so I consciously feel really lucky about this. So you have to trust that the publication is doing that and it's serving your interests in that way. You mentioned the distribution, though, as well. This year is the first year that we've actually put the book into distribution. So it's the same distributor out of London that distributes Simon's. It's called Magazine Heaven, really creative. They also distribute Cabana. So, it creates another interesting question for us, because for the past 5 issues, the book has only gone to people who already know us. So they already have a context for us, and then they see the book. Now people are going to pick it up in Airmail or Dawn Books or wherever, and that's their first exposure to urban electric. And so it's a kind of a challenging question for us to start to wrap our heads around that, but it's really exciting. It's really exciting. That's why a couple things about the cover. For one, we've got on the back now. We're official. We're in the Library of Congress now with a actual mark. Who knows? Maybe the Library of Congress won't be around much longer, but we are there. We made it. And interestingly, feedback from the distributor, we made the title a little bit larger font than we have in the past. That was a big conversation internally. We weren't really sure we wanted to do that, but I think it looks great.
Question. Is there one that got away? Is there a home that either you lost to another publication that you really wanted, or is there one that you're just dying to shoot that you cannot get access to? Tom, I think I know the answer from you, but I want all three of you to answer if possible.
Oh, gosh.
Well, there is a couple that I'm working on, but I don't think anything has gotten away because we're still doing the publication. So we're just like pushing it back to a later issue.
Yeah.
But I'm working on a couple of things that I would love to happen. That would just be so fabulous and fun. But it might take a bit of time. But I think that's sort of part of doing it, is that you have this big pool of ideas and people you visit, and all of this really comes down to the right moment. So it's also like respecting that a little bit. And I think a couple of the features we have in this issue, the one we're bringing out, are some that I've been working on for the last 2 years, and they've said no several times. I just don't take no for an answer and just wait, and then I ask again or go for a cup of tea, however. So nothing has gotten away as far as I know.
Yeah, I would say the same, in the sense that, we do start every year with a large list, and then we really try to figure out what makes the most sense and who we really, really want to go after. And maybe it sounds like a cop-out, but to a certain extent, we think if it doesn't work out, we weren't meant to do that. Again, this isn't really our business, or our primary business, so we're much more sanguine about that when it happens. That's fine, because it's very, very important. I don't know if you feel this way. We can't strong-arm somebody into doing a story with us. They have to want this as much as, or in a similar way that we do. So we kind of don't have a lot of regrets about stories that got away.
I have a couple that have gotten away. One, I didn't lose them to other people, but the people sometimes decide for perfectly good reasons they don't want their home in a magazine. And John Curran, the painter John Curran, and his wife Rachel Feinstein have a house in Gramercy that was decorated by the Paragallis, Studio Paragalli, and by all accounts, it's spectacular. Anyway, we may never know. No, it's actually, there's a couple of pictures floating around. There were some in Roberto's book, but and then the other one, which is funny because I'm almost shameless on this one, is, you know, Tom Ford, of course, has amazing houses, a bunch of them now, and I saw him on the beach this summer, and basically, you know, and he was just, poor guy, just trying to walk down the beach, and I'm accosting him, being like, "Oh, I hear you're moved into. Did you move into your house yet?" and then I followed up with a publicist, and I got a curt note saying, "Mr. Ford will not be participating."
Thanks, guys. This has been amazing. Tom Delavan, Simon Mørch, and Dave Dawson.